You know, I wouldn't say it's like herding cats, but to be honest, I think the window is already kind of came and gone. It actually did help me because it made me so mentally strong. I'm like, okay, hell no, I ain't doing that. Are you out of your mind? Oh, I said I could do it, not that I wanted to.
It's James, the Wisdom, Hayes, Cobb, the IGL from NRG, coming to join us here for an interview. And I don't know, man. I think you said you liked it before, James, to be called the Wisdom. Are you going to change your alias to that?
No, but that was a hell of a name you gave me. I still remember that match too when you called me that. Honestly, it's good. I like that one. The Wisdom.
Hey, man. Yeah, I mean, you've been around the block in the attack FPS scene. You've been around for a very long time in Counter-Strike Go. You played at the top level for Counter-Strike, in my opinion, as well. I mean, I think you had a few major runs too, trying to qualify into that. So, it's only fitting that we call you the Wisdom, especially that you're catching up to my current age, and you have a lot of experiences to share. Thankfully, at my age, my hair still has a little bit of purple, but you seems to be starting to go gray a bit here.
Hey, now be careful.
Take a step back, man. Holy shit. Killing
Shit,
the guy.
my bad. I thought we were cooling down. I thought it was cooling down for a bit, but
I mean, listen. I think his hairline looks a little better than yours.
that's true. I will agree to that. I will attest to that. You
Yeah,
got
That's the one thing I got is the hairline. The hairline is immaculate. The gray is seeping in. Like when I trimmed up my beard a couple days ago, and it's just like I noticed there's a gray patch. I don't think you can really see it on camera. There's like a patch right here in this area.
Yeah.
It is, man. It worries me every time.
You know what? Look at mine. Daniel, I think you had that zoom in shit. Put the zoom in back in my face. I have to show you mine. So I haven't shaved in like 3 days, right? And this is what it looks like. So when I don't shave for like 3 or 4 days, I have a little bit that comes out of my dimples right here, right? Then there's a gap.
Whoa, too close.
Take it off. Hey.
And then a little bit. So, like, if I wait 10 years, I could maybe have a Fu Manchu. But if not, if I just grow this, I look like fucking Hitler. So, and I'm fucking 38, James. I'm 38. So, okay, let's time out. So, yeah, we're derailing. Let's talk about your experience here, James. Let's talk about. Let's get to talk
with
about
me
your
on the show. With me on the show.
I'm fucking sorry, Zesh. I apologize. I definitely went too far. Well, let's talk about your experience here from going into all the years of tactical FPS, talking about CS and Valorant. So you've played at least, 10 years in CSGO. You've made the switch over to Valorant. Is there anything that you took away from your career within CSGO that you're able to apply currently into Valorant?
Oh, man. I think IGLing towards the end of my career helped me a lot in understanding, like, team dynamics, like because before I IGL'd, I was an entry fragger, so I didn't see the game the way everyone else did because everyone was behind me supporting me, and I was kind of like leading the charge a lot. I was a very aggressive player. But when I switched to IGLing, I kind of like got to see how the team like can help each other into like doing what the entry guy had to do. So that helped me a lot. It just gave me a broader vision of what needs to happen in a round. And also, there was a brief time where Steele was our coach. That was completely against the rules, by the way, at the time. But he like really taught me some very useful lessons. And so I think that helped me big time. And towards the end of my Go career was learning to IGL and like learning how to support teammates better. Yeah.
Well, so in that IGL role, obviously in Counter-Strike, I feel like having the run that you did, you know, you're playing with people who have been in the scene for quite some time as well. Then you switch over to Valorant, and now you're having to IGL again, but you're doing it with, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. How is that? Is that we talked about cats on the show, but is it like herding cats and trying to keep everybody, entertained with what's going on and teach them actually how to play the game?
I wouldn't say it's like herding cats, but it's struggle sometimes because I didn't switch to Valorant. It wasn't like a conscious choice that I was like, oh, I'm gonna go pro in Valorant, so I'm just switching over. I was just playing for fun. And it kind of just naturally happened. And we made that team, the initial TSM roster. And that was just to play tournaments. We didn't have an IGL. We were just playing the tournaments just to play. And then as it got more serious, then we were like, okay, we actually need someone to IGL because this is not going to work long term. Like we all just knew it. And so I was like, I mean, we juggled it, but I initially started as IGL. So Rosa did it for a little bit, Color did it for a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't really a big problem in that team because everyone on that team like really listened. They were like really good team players. They always listened to the IGL, no matter who it was. However, when I switched to NRG, okay, that was like herding cats. Okay. Man, what the hell is I can't even describe what it's like to play with some of these guys when I first switched. I'm like, this game has been out for 1.5 years already. They've been an established team, and I swear to God, it was the most confusing thing. Like people were just doing. I'd be like, yo, well, let's just run this default. We'll just default. And so everyone knew what to do off of like a certain default. But then in the mid round, it would just be like almost completely silent, and then this guy would get picked off, this guy would get a kill, this guy would get picked off right after getting a kill. And I'm like, what is going on, guys? There's no communication. No one's like saying, yo, do this, we'll follow up in this way. It was so weird. And
Sounds
so
like my ranked games with Tanner yesterday.
Bro.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It was slightly better than a rank game. Slightly. Just slightly. Okay. But they got away with it.
It's a very interesting question because this raises a lot of things. Like I'm giving shout out to my best Polish friend Lofar at this point. I think Simple made this comment where I think quote unquote those fucking Valorant players need to stop over peaking.
Tark stream.
Yeah. And this always brings to the point, like you said with NRG, which is kind of weird because you played. I don't know who you're particularly talking about, but Sam and Ethan have been, let's say, somewhat established CS players, right? So this raises the question for me. Is it an A thing? Is it a general Valorant thing? Is it what is it? Because fundamentals right now, CS is like how old? 20 years plus, and people don't get fundamentals right. Isn't that kind of weird to experience? To be like, hold on, we're playing the same game, right?
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty interesting topic because I think you said it's an NA thing or is it a Valorant thing? I think it's both. I don't think it's just one of them. And I also think it's like a deep-seated problem with being like the star, like getting the clips. And this is as you kind of alluded to, it happens in CS still. It's like they don't play fundamentally correct. Whenever you get like 2 or 3 kills, I'm guilty of it too. If I have like a really nice like 3K, I want to go for the 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
Because it's going to look nice. And you want to be, and I think this stems from frag movies, like back in the day. This is like a problem that started, 15 years ago.
Fort Minor videos, Linkin Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You always want to go for the clip. You want to be in the frag movie. Like it makes you popular and it gives you more opportunities both in streaming and also outside of streaming. You get brand deals because people view you as like, like Scream, for example. You get those crazy one taps. He was always an amazing player, but he got cut from a lot of top teams for a reason. And that's not to say he's a bad player. He is an incredible player. He's way better than me. But fundamentally, he has
Don't
a
sell
problem.
yourself short, James.
Right? So
yeah.
but I think it is a problem in NA because of that. But also Valorant is an issue because you have characters like Jet, like Chamber, like Reyna that have these get out of jail free cards. Whereas in Counter-Strike, if you're out of position, you could get your 1 or 2, but sometimes you would just die and you couldn't get away. But in this game, you can have terrible positioning and get away. And so I think that causes an issue with fundamentals as well. Kind of blurs the line of what's good fundamentally.
This opens up the book because I think we're having this old dusty book that we're now opening up called Fundamentals, because this raises the big question about Valorant as well. Because I had this discussion about teams coming up with new fancy shit instead of working on fundamentals because it's quick rewarding, right? Do you personally believe that in a game like Valorant, always developing new strats can get you further than working once on your fundamentals, getting them real good, working with the fundament, and then moving on strategically?
I tend to lean to the side of strategies
Okay.
I think being innovative is really important, especially in a game that comes out with frequent updates with agents that are
But
also
lacking
being released.
fundamentals and new strategies. Sorry, lacking fundamentals and new strategies.
What
You think that has a higher reward?
uh, I think so. I think if you ask me that
Okay.
question about Counter-Strike, I think
No.
fundamentals are more important.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
Agreed, agreed.
But in this
Okay.
game, I think being on top of the meta and being ahead of it is more important than being fundamentally sound,
Mhm.
which
All right.
goes against everything
It's
that I've been
yeah.
taught. But
Makes
Well,
sense. No, no, no.
yeah.
Go on.
go ahead, Sesh. You were going to continue. You're going to continue.
It's just super interesting because I had this discussion and it feels like it's a super thin line because with, as you said, the game constantly changing. It feels a lot like if you are once fundamentally good, like you don't overpeak, you don't make those mistakes, you everything you know as fundamentals that wins you fights is something that you can prevail with. But it feels like in Valorant, it is just not enough. It is just not enough to have a simple strat but really good fundamentals. At least it feels like that because I think no teams right now has really good fundamentals, like really, really, really good fundamentals.
Mm.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I like I said, I think the line of fundamental is just blurred in this game because there's so much to keep track of. I mean, I'm someone who at the start of the round, I'm trying to track every ultimate, how many orbs, how close are they, how much money we have, how much money they have, what strat do I want to call based on all of that. There's just like a whole there's just way more information to process in this game
Mhm.
than there is in Counter-Strike, in my opinion. And so the fundamentally you could be doing something that you think is correct, but because mid-round things can change so dramatically
Mhm.
that suddenly what you did is actually not the right play, even though
Mhm.
fundamentally it is the right play.
Yeah.
So it's just very blurred in this game, and it drives me crazy because I never know. I just never know what's the right choice. I
Yeah, yeah.
just don't.
And it gets me to think too, because now at the beginning of the rounds, you're thinking about what happens and who's at what position in terms of ultimate orbs or whatnot and economy. But even in the mid round or even early rounds, you have to figure out what utility has been used, what's left, what place you can take advantage of, but within a
Mhm.
certain window, because you have to think about abilities that could also refresh within 30 seconds, 35 seconds as
Yep.
well. And you got to time that out too. So it does get very intricate, which then brings me to a part where I wanted to ask about the, again, CSGO experience. Is it transferable to Valorant even as a coach? So as a coach, if you have to think about CS fundamentals, yes, training, scaling, spacing, and then of course site execs. But then it comes down to also all of the abilities that are coming out in Valorant right now. Is the CSGO experience enough? Or does it provide enough insight for a player to be ready or for a team to be ready for a tournament?
Is it enough? I think that the good thing about switching okay, if you were pro or even semi-pro in Counter-Strike and then you make the swap to Valorant, I think you have an edge because you already in that game it focuses so much on fundamentals that you have that base that a lot of players who just started in Valorant maybe don't have. Like you have the
Mhm.
teamwork built already. And so that helps you big time in Valorant. Then you just have to learn Valorant. And then, so I think you have an advantage in that sense.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I don't know about other games, but I think from CS, yeah, the fundamental base that you learn from CS is really important.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So there's one interesting question about this because I had this conversation because for fun I was working with the RL team and was sitting in their pracs and there was this conversation I had with a CS coach about coaching itself where they said a thing that might be not realized by other Valorant coaches are protocols, where
Mm,
protocols is basically I would describe them as an order of commands that is shaped into one small bracket that everyone has automated in their head. And
yeah.
this is something where I think coaching experience from like games like CS is something probably super helpful because those things are really freeing up some space in your mind. Would you say that's actually one of those things that actually coaches from CS can really apply to Valorant?
Oh, for sure. Protocols are incredibly important, both in CS and in Valorant. So, even though Valorant is much more like confusing mid round to know what the right choice is, if you have a protocol, I've always said this. I think it's more important to have 5 people on the same page making the wrong decision than everyone on a different page and maybe making the right one. It's just like it doesn't matter if the call's good or bad. As long as you all follow through with it, you can still win. So I protocols are really important for that, because you can distill something down into, like you said, 1 or 2 words. It could be, a paragraph of instructions. And so everyone knows what to do. And that gives your players the freedom to be able to call things in the middle of it, in the mid round. It's a very clean communication. I mean, it makes it easier as an IGL. So yeah, definitely. If I was a coach switching, I would definitely keep the protocols. You're gonna have to create more. It's really hard in this game. We have a ton of protocols, and even I forget them sometimes because there's just so much to follow. But yeah, you should definitely have a few protocols for like every map, every side.
Yeah.
Sure.
It gets me to ask you as well, James, about a current coach that you've played with in the past too in CS:GO, which is used to be known as just lounging, like JDM, Josh. So you've played with him in Mouse Pass in CS:GO, and he's always been known to be a prominent opera. And usually operas don't really have like that IGL mindset, and necessarily like Fallen or something too. But he was just mainly that person to come out and get frags for Mouse Pass, and then when he left CS:GO, had a huge break, and then suddenly just appears as a coach here for FaZe Clan. So I want to know insights a little bit about JDM's perspective within his CS:GO days that you think would be good that he could apply in his coaching experience with FaZe. What does he bring to the table for FaZe Clan?
Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. I love Josh. Let me just start off by saying I love Josh. Right?
I love where
Josh.
this is going. I always love it when you start to answer that way.
Okay. The thing is, I don't know what he's like in this game because I've never played with him and I've never been in the room when he's coaching. So I don't know what he brings, but I can tell you, and whenever I played with him on CLG, it was so funny. Pujon, so FNS was our IGL at the time, and I remember this conversation, and we're playing Dust 2, and Pujon go like mid round, he was like, yo, Josh, can you walk up cat and just try and walk pick it? And Josh goes, I'm not comfortable doing that. And this is like mid match. And Pujon goes, what the fuck do you mean you're not comfortable doing that? Do what I said. And like, it just started this war. And so that always stuck with me. I'm like, okay, Josh was really tough to work with. They argued all the time. He was really tough to work with, but he's such a nice guy, which is so crazy. So I don't know what happened in between then and now, but so, I imagine he's changed. I imagine, but he was so like stubborn. To be fair, I think we all were. Like I was an ultra stubborn person. I still kind of am, but it like I can't even comment on what it's like for him coaching this game because it's like I said, it's been like 5 or 6 years since I played with him. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I'm just happy to see him back. Honestly, I love the guy, and yeah, we've had some good times. But he's an interesting fellow.
Nice.
So to that, kind of staying on the same topic, or people coming over again, maybe a little bit later. I say later, but Valorant's still super early. Do you think we're getting to a point where it is going to get harder for, we see players looking to come over, obviously Shroud playing, Stewie2K, like those guys are playing, but even in the coaching sphere, right, coming over from traditional tactical shooters, we'll just say Counter-Strike in general, to Valorant, where now we're up to 17 agents or 18 agents. And like, at what point do you think there's a point where it's like, hey, we just can't, it's too much to try and digest, right? Playing League of Legends right now is almost possible to learn. Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Are you all right? James, are you all right? Holy
that wasn't
shit.
me.
That was me.
Sash, are you okay? What the fuck?
I'm fully fine. Please go on.
I'm not gonna lie, that took me completely out of the question. What was the question again?
Do you think, are we getting to a point in Valorant that it is getting too hard to transition because of how much is happening? Like even this new agent flexing that, shields might be introduced to the game.
Yeah, I think the longer you wait, the harder it's gonna be. To be honest, I think the window has already kind of came and gone. I think at this point there's so many young, talented players that have made their way up the ranks in Valorant alone that it's hard to break in. Like it's hard for me to say it. Like Stu is like a generational talent, and it is hard for me to justify saying like you should pick up Stu over who's like even like Bang, for example, if that was an option, because there's just so many good young talented players that deserve shots, that it's hard for me to justify that. So I think the longer it goes on, the harder it's going to be to switch. And I think even now you probably even shouldn't. I mean, unless you're willing to grind, these guys are going to need to grind for at least 6 months. Because like even like Shroud, I'm so happy to see him in the scene. Like, I love the guy, I love Mike, and I love anyone who's been a part of the CS:GO scene that I got to like experience pro play with. I have a lot of respect for those people, and even when he got picked up, I talked about it on stream. Someone asked my thoughts on it. I was like, I don't think they should have gotten him. They should have got someone else. There's people who've been grinding Valorant who probably would be better. And statistically, it kind of showed. He's a fundamentally great player. Has some of the best fundamentals of any player I've ever seen. However, he's not playing Valorant. He's playing Counter-Strike when you watch him play. And you have to be playing Valorant. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So does this mean then, when you actually made the switch over from CS to Valorant, that there were some things that you needed to relearn when you were playing Valorant, outside of like the abilities portion? Because I remember at some point when Valorant first came out, 6 months down the road, everybody was talking about, oh, you got to unbind crouch because crouch is fucking useless in the game, versus like CS:GO where you're crouching every opportunity that you have.
No, you're like crab spraying in Counter-Strike. You don't do that in this. You don't understand. It took me like 4 or 5 months on the Switch to stop crab spraying. I did it non-stop. No, there's definitely things that I even still struggle with. Like in Counter-Strike, crossfiring is such a fundamental thing you do, especially on like low or no util. You just go into a crossfire and it's probably going to work. It won't always work, but most of the time. In this game, I feel like crossfires work like 10% of the time because there's so many different pieces of utility you have to account for. There's scans, flashes. Someone can put up a wall that cuts off one side of it. It's just like there's so much crap you have to deal with that crossfires almost seem useless. However, they're still decent at times. So you have to know when to use certain things and when not to. And it's just much harder. You can't. Yeah, you really have to have a lot of experience in Valorant, and you can't think like, okay, because I played Counter-Strike, I'm going to be good. You're not. I'm sorry. You're just not.
That's exactly what I thought, because I felt at one point in Valorant, particularly when FPX was not successful, that being a long-term CS pro is not paying off because you're stuck in routines that are not applying to the game. I think this learning process, like learning something new, is nearly impossible. It feels like for many players nearly impossible. I think one of the examples that I remember from 2020 was Rubinho, who played at Heretics. It was a long time ago, who never succeeded. There's like a lot of examples where Valorant, CS actually didn't help them.
Yeah. And by the way, I love that guy. Fellow WoW player, respect. We all struggle with it. All CS players, we struggle with it because, like we were talking about at the start, there's a fundamental issue that we have where we think it's like we made the right play because we think of it in Counter-Strike terms, but it's actually not. And so you really have to take yourself out of that mindset, and it's hard to do. And I think it takes like at least a year. You really have to be grinding Valorant a lot and just not playing Counter-Strike. I actually played an MM the other day in CSGO's first time in like a year. Okay. And I was playing with my teammates. So it's Tex, Ian, and then Quan Dicey was playing with us. Okay. And we queued up an MM. And I'm not kidding. I'm trying to jump jiggle corners. You can't do that in Counter-Strike. You jiggle. So it's like after playing Valorant so long, your brain is like switched to like you're trying to do Valorant stuff in Counter-Strike, whereas at the start you're trying to do Counter-Strike stuff in Valorant. So you just really gotta grind your way through it and get used to it. That's why you can't just switch and be good. And so I think a lot of these players struggle with that.
So I want to take a step back, and I'm going to try and tie the two together here, and we'll just say because Valorant has a lot of stuff to worry about, and being High Warlord Hazed has a lot of stuff. You got a lot of stuff going on. So in your WoW days, would you say that has helped you at all, being a High Warlord of WoW PvP and just mowing people down?
Listen, those were dark times, okay? Dark times. So I did it just to see if I could, you know what I mean? Like,
Ah.
it's such a grind that I was
Yeah.
like, okay, if I can do this grind, I can do any grind. It's not gonna bother me.
Okay.
Okay. So over 4 months, actually looked at my played time and I tracked it. I averaged 16 hours a day for 4 months. That was my average. Okay. So towards the end, I was playing WoW PvP for 20 hours and sleeping 4. And then I did that for, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. So okay, so it actually did help me because it made me so mentally strong. I'm like, okay, I can grind anything. And whenever Valorant came out, which was like literally right after that,
Mhm.
I told myself I could do it. I was like,
Mhm.
okay.
Look at you now.
Chet was like, dude, you should play pro. And I'm like, okay. I mean, sure, I'll try. And then I just started grinding. I was playing Valorant probably like 14 plus hours a day for about 3 or 4 months. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? Why not? TSM came knocking. I'm like, there's money. I'm here. Let's do it.
Nice.
Well, how did that evolve now with you IGLing for NRG? Because we just talked about how much you have to follow the game and whatnot and be ahead of the meta. So,
Mhm.
do you still have another 6 day where you're like grinding VOD reviews, where you're going in a server by yourself to set up plays for your teams with Josh RT? How does that schedule work today? You built up that titanium mental to survive these long hour trending days in front of a computer.
Hell no, I ain't doing that. Are you out of your mind? Ole. I said I could do it, not that I wanted to.
So Josh
I-
does all of it now.
Josh does a ton of work. I mean, I'm not kidding. He way more work than me. Him and Tony, who's our assistant coach.
Yep.
He did legendary LCS coach. For people who don't know,
Nice.
those two put in a crazy amount of work. They always have like, thing is, when I joined, I thought I was gonna have to put in that type of work. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to make all the strats. The whole strat book's mine. I did it with TSM where I made like the whole strat book. And then when I joined NRG, it was like, yeah, I don't have to bring a single strat. Like they'll make all of them. And then I just have to like tweak them. I'd be like, okay, I don't like this. I do like this. We need a strat for this purpose. I'll sometimes introduce a strat, but it's pretty rare. They typically do all the work. And then my main focus is actually like fundamental stuff.
Mm.
And I can really focus on my own gameplay a lot, which is really nice. I've never had that in any FPS team. Instead, it's usually been me doing like a bulk of the strat work. So yeah, they also like, they're keeping track of the other regions, how they play the meta, which makes it super easy for me. Yeah, I mean, it's so nice. It's so nice. I don't have to put in those hours. Yeah, I'm spoiled.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. At least at that point, though, does that well, I mean, I've seen you start to frag a lot more as well. Maybe that's the cause as to not having to spend as many hours trying to like build the strat book for the team and whatnot, and how you got the wisdom in my opinion. But also taking a little bit of a step back though and thinking about the fundamentals. Does it come into difficult discussions that you may have from time to time between you and the coach and the assistant coach when it comes down to, okay, I have this strat book, this could actually work, and how does your mind go into building out that strat book overall as a whole team?
Yeah. So I mean, we definitely butt heads sometimes. They'll
Okay.
like want me to play a map a certain way, and I'll just be like, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't think this is right. And then we'll go back and forth, and the process. Because I have a certain style that I like to call, how I want to see my team play, and that doesn't always align with my coaching or my coach staff. So it is a struggle sometimes, and we have to sit down and talk about it and be like, hey, I don't like this, I like this, and we'll work it out eventually. So sometimes we can't agree. I mean, it happens. Like, we just don't come to an agreement, and then I just tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, when I'm in the match, I'm gonna call the way I want. I'm sorry. Like, we can practice however we want, but in the match, this is how I think we should play.
Mm.
And I think they understand that. And so, like, that's why I never put blame on anyone when it comes to match time. We didn't play good strategic. It's my fault because I make the decisions in the game. And so we all understand that. So yeah, we butt heads sometimes, and it's always a process, but we get through it.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I wanna ask real quick, since you've been in Valorant since its inception, obviously maybe things didn't look as as ironed out or hashed out in way of like tournaments or even like players that you're playing with. Do you have any kind of interesting or funny experiences that you've had in this transition, or maybe even moments like the I don't feel comfortable trying to walk pick somebody mid, right? Has anything come to you, whether it be with TSM or now NRG?
Oh man, there's been a lot of times it's been uncomfortable. A lot. I remember. Okay, so something that was really hard for me was like when controllers started playing in their smokes. Like they would throw a smoke like in the middle of a bomb site, and then they would just play in it, or like they would throw one for a teammate. Because I've always played in a way that you just always throw the smoke at the choke, and then you hold the choke. But that's not really like the most ideal way to play in Valorant. So, I mean, it's good sometimes, but not all the time. So that was like something that I struggled with really badly, and I pushed back. I remember Josh was like, he was like, I'm not gonna say what map or anything, but he was like, "Yo, you should really smoke like close to you and play in it." And I was like, "Josh, you're stupid. That is such a bad play." Like I remember we would just argue. We argued for months about it. And then eventually I came around. I'm like, all right, this is the right play. My bad. They're like, this is this. You're right. But like,
What?
I
And a Viper
struggled
smoke
big
on
time.
Breeze?
Like I said, I won't say.
Okay, so
No
so
comment.
there's a slightly, I wouldn't say philosophical, but very self-reflecting question. That is, would you say you've been better in Valorant or in CS?
I think I was better in Counter-Strike when I was pure entry, not when I was IGLing. I think when I was pure entry, because that's the kind of style that's just the person I am. Like I want to go in first. I want to like lead the charge. I don't really do that anymore, which sucks. And I get yelled at a lot actually. By the coaches, both whenever Chet was coaching me, whenever Taylor was coaching me, and when Josh and Tony are coaching me. They have all yelled at me. They're like, dude, I used to entry as Viper on Icebox. And they were like, dude, you have to stop. And I'm like, well, like that's what I do. I don't know. I just see the gap and I go.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I think in Counter-Strike I was mechanically I was really good actually. I was very, very good when I was entering. But I think I've improved since switching to Valorant. I think like right now is probably the best I've ever been in Valorant. Like, which is weird because I'm getting older. I don't think I should be getting better. But if I do feel like I'm getting better. So yeah, I don't know, because now I'm on low sense and I've like kind of learned to play on it. I'm a controller. I had to change my style completely. So I think now I'm better in Valorant. Right now it's the best I've ever been, but at the start of my pro career in Counter-Strike, I was like, I thought I was crazy. I thought it was really good.
If Angel could still win a Masters event at that age, I think you could still win a Masters or a champion right now. Hayes, I fucking believe in you. And actually, that brings me into a transition that I want to get to, because you've been around the scene for a while. Angel's been around the scene for a while in CS until now, even CS 1.6 until today. And I wanted to know, like, your advices for like new Valorant players, because I think this is also important to ask. Because even yesterday, there's been some drama going on the TLs between, let's say, Frosty and Nade Shot about, things being handed on a silver platter from one end or should not be. And then you had all the fucking boomers of our age coming out of the woodworks. Back in my day, the grind was this. We were paid peanuts and stuff like that too. And I want to make sure that we don't bring some sort of like Sigma grind set that you have to actually play 16 hours a day to try to fucking make it through, and that you need some sort of like work-life balance. So what's your best way and best advice that you could give to these young individuals that are aspiring to become pro? Is it about the 16-hour grind set, or how do you manage that?
I mean, it can't, the 16-hour grind set, that Sigma stuff, man, I mean, you can do it and you will become a god. But But listen, I don't. It's not sustainable. You're gonna burn out. I mean, that's just the truth.
Mhm.
If you can do it, then do it. Honestly, if you can, just do it. But like, it's not. I don't recommend it. You know, the way we all started, especially us older generation,
Yeah.
it was a hobby. We loved doing it. So we played. You know, I played for. People ask me all the time on stream like how I started, and I'm like, dude, I played for like 15 years without making money. Okay, I just did it for fun. It was just something I did in my spare time. I'd, come from school. I'd scrim, play a match. I was just hanging out with the boys. I was having fun.
Yeah.
And then, whenever I decided that, maybe I could go pro, I still had a full-time job at the time. So my schedule was I'd sleep 8 hours, I'd work 8 hours, and then I'd come home from work and I would play for like 7 hours. But that isn't really sustainable for most people because I lived with my parents at the time, so they cooked for me. I had them do my laundry. I didn't have to do anything. So I was able to do that. So it's not really sustainable for the normal person. But if you can just it first and foremost, it has to be a hobby. You have to enjoy it. You have to just enjoy doing it. Don't force it. Don't think of it as a career. I think that's terrible. If it happens, it happens. Yeah, just love it. And if you don't love it, if you don't do it as a hobby, if you're thinking only money, just don't even bother. Just go do something else.
Yeah, actually, that brings me to another question, actually, because if you don't want to think about this as a long term career or something that you could live off of in the long term, what's that like for somebody who's quote unquote made it into the pro scene? Where, let's say, you could get cut within the next year or two, or your career is only 5 years, and you don't really have like a B plan right after that. How can you leverage like an esports career to have something come out of it that you could continue to thrive off of outside of esports competition when if you've made it as a player?
Uh, that's tough. I mean, you really, if you know what you're doing, especially on like social media, I think that's really important. If you constantly try to build your brand while you're a pro, if you have followers, I mean, that is valuable. And you might not believe it, but you can make some decent money off of smaller brand deals. You don't have to be a big time streamer or anything to get brand deals. You can be a smaller fish and still get away with it, and you can live off of it. It's not going to be the most ideal way to live, but as long as you're like building your brand and your socials, once you make it, you can even start before, to be fair. As long as you're building your brand, you set yourself up for at least having options afterwards, either as a content creator, or maybe you stream on the side, maybe just a little bit to work on your on-camera personality, so that you could do something like casting or analyst work, or something like that, or you make connections behind the scenes while you're a pro, so you're always talking to people at events or online, for online events, and like make networking is the most important thing you could ever do.
Yep.
I mean, that's just number one. That's as a player, and for what you want to do afterwards, because you're not going to get on top teams without getting recommendations. And so the only way you get recommendations is by being friends with people. You have to be likable, you have to be good, and you got to have luck. So that's just the way it is. If you're a sick player but you're an asshole, good luck, man. You might have one shot, and if you mess up that one shot, you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to be likable and you have to be good.
I agree with you. Like, even if it's a hobby or a passion that you want to get into it, at the end of the day, once you've made it, it's also somewhat of a job. And when you're at a job, you actually have to work. It's not because I've gone pro that I've signed that I don't need to watch demos. I don't need to spend time within a server because I've grinded 16 hours a day in fucking and I'm Radiant top 50 for like the last 3 acts. That doesn't help into developing yourself as a player, a career, or being a team player overall. So that's probably my biggest takeaway too, is that you got to keep working. You got to figure out your next avenue, and you got to figure out your plan B and C all the time, and no matter what aspects of life that you're currently in. So that's some great stuff. Thanks. See, that's why you're the fucking wisdom, James. But yeah, now it's actually time to talk about champions. It's time to bring out the spice, because that shit fucking starts off tomorrow. And I know we're all excited, but we got to go for a fucking break. We got to pay some bills. Thanks again, Twitch. Thanks again, Juked. We're going to take a 3-minute break. And when we come back with James, we'll talk about champions.